It's 5 weeks ago, because of the work of Director Patel, we learned that the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee and current United States Senator leaked classified information. We learned this because a whistleblower came forward. Whistleblower with 23 years experience in the intelligence community, a Democrat staffer on the committee, said this: they were pressured to leak classified information, which sort of raises the obvious question. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, the chair of that committee, who's supposed to be guarding our secrets, why would he be encouraging the leaking of classified information? Whistleblower told us that answer as well. The leaked information was supposed to be used, the leaked information, false information, was going to be used to indict President Trump.
We've all read the Horowitz report. Something's clearly wrong with respect to the FISA warrant process. Less noticed, but perhaps more important, was a follow-up by Mr. Horowitz after he did an audit of other FISA applications. And he found an equal number, actually many more, abuses.
It was a hearing no one expected to turn this explosive. Jim Jordan, armed with whistleblower revelations and classified reports, took direct aim at Adam Schiff, accusing him of leaking false information in a plot to undermine President Trump's first term. The room grew tense as Jordan's voice cut through the air, bringing the spotlight squarely on the former Intelligence Committee chair's alleged misconduct. 5 weeks earlier, a whistleblower with 23 years in the intelligence community came forward with a stunning claim. Schiff and others pressured staffers to leak classified information later exposed as false, meant to indict President Trump. Jim Jordan laid it out bluntly. Why would the head of the Intelligence Committee, entrusted with protecting America's secrets, push for leaks that could alter history? Let's dive in.
Jim Comey was also sharing things he wasn't supposed to share. Again, don't take my word for it. The Inspector General told us this. In his report, he said, quote, James Comey violated FBI policy by disclosing classified information. And what was Comey's motive? Same as the senator from California: to sabotage and undermine President Trump's first term. And we know that Mr. Comey's not been shy about what his objective was. In fact, 4 months ago, he told us. Remember this? 8647. Jim Comey told us just 4 months ago. Now, how'd they do it? How did the former chair of the Intel community, the former FBI director, and others in our government attempt to undermine President Trump's first term? 7 weeks ago, because of the good work of the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, we learned from another whistleblower, a second whistleblower, that in the closing days of the Obama administration, the intelligence community assessment was changed. On December 5th, 2016, they had one assessment. That assessment said Russia did not impact the election vote count. There was a meeting at the White House on December 9th, 2016, where it was decided, no, we're not going to have that. We're going to come up with a new one. And the new one said Russia was trying to influence election and did influence election, which just wasn't accurate. And that new one is published on January 6, 2017. Let's just show you a few things that took place. I want to show you first this email from Admiral Rogers, the head of the NSA. You can see it was December 22nd. It says to Jim, John, and Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Jim Comey. And he says, I asked my team if they've had sufficient access to the underlying intelligence, sufficient time to review that intelligence. On both points, my team raised concern. Further states, my folks aren't fully comfortable. A few hours later, there's an email back to Admiral Rogers. This one is from Jim Clapper, and it says this: it is essential that we be on the same page and all of us are supportive of the report in the highest tradition of, that's our story and we're sticking to it. We may have to compromise on our normal modalities. This is one project that has to be a team sport. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. Compromise on normal modalities, that's a fancy way of saying, that's the government speak for we're going to have to change the rules. In fact, we're not going to follow our own rules. And that's exactly what they did to get the objective they wanted, to undermine President Trump. Now, how did it specifically take place? The whistleblower said that the government officials ignored concerns about discredited information. And what was that discredited information? What was the discredited information that they didn't ignore the concerns about? What did they use, that discredited information? Of course, it was the dossier. The now famous Steele dossier that was paid for by the Clinton campaign when they hired the law firm Perkins Coie, who hired Fusion GPS, who hired the foreigner Christopher Steele, who wrote all this garbage and lies down. That is what was used to change the intelligence community report. And what happens next? What do Jim, John, and Jim do next? They go to Trump Tower on January 6, 2017, to brief then President-elect Trump about the dossier. Again, the Clinton-financed, foreign-authored dossier that the whistleblower knows is garbage and that they know is garbage. And then there's one final step. One final step. Jim Comey leaves that meeting with the president and immediately leaks to the press that they briefed the president on the discredited information. They briefed the president on the dossier and thereby giving it some credibility and creating the basis and the predicate for all they did to the president. They leaked false information, they leaked classified information, they used and leaked discredited information, and they didn't follow their own rules, all to sabotage President Trump's first term. And but for this guy, Kash Patel, but for this guy, we would never have known this information. The good people of this great country would not have known what took place 8 years ago when they were trying to undermine the guy elected by we the people. And I want to thank Attorney General Bondi. She set up a special strike force, a special team, to look into this and see if there's any criminal liability that exists in what took place.
As the hearing came to a close, the weight of Jim Jordan's words hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just another political back and forth. This was about truth, power, and the American people's right to know what had been hidden for far too long. Jim Jordan didn't just lay out facts. He exposed a coordinated effort to weaponize intelligence, leak false information, and undermine a sitting president. He connected the dots, from the whistleblower revelations to the secret dossiers, from the compromised intelligence reports to the political operatives who pushed them forward. Each piece fit perfectly into a picture of corruption and political manipulation at the highest levels of government. And while critics tried to deflect and downplay, Jordan stood firm. He reminded the country that this wasn't about party lines or political gain. It was about the fundamental principles of democracy, transparency, accountability, and the rule of law. While others leaked and lied, Jim Jordan demanded answers. While bureaucrats played politics, he fought for whistleblowers and the taxpayers who fund these institutions. And while some tried to rewrite history, he made sure the truth was preserved for the record, no matter how uncomfortable it was for those in power. History will remember this hearing as a turning point, not just for the scandals it uncovered, but for leaders like Jim Jordan who refused to look the other way. He showed courage when it was easier to stay silent, determination when it was easier to play along, and an unwavering commitment to the truth when so many wanted it buried. In the end, Jim Jordan stood tall, not just for President Trump, but for the American people. He proved that no matter how deep the corruption runs, there will always be voices willing to fight for justice, for accountability, and for the future of this republic.